There's this really provocative idea circulating about early Christianity that, the book of Acts might not be what we all think it is.
Yeah,
Millions believe Luke wrote it, but what if the real culprit was Irenaeus of Lyons?
Wait, are you saying the author we traditionally credit, Luke, might actually be a later editor?
Exactly,
That's a game changer in how we view early Christian history.
Right, so check this out. The traditional narrative tells us that Luke, a companion of Paul, penned Acts in the first century, giving us an account of the apostles and the early church. But what if Acts, and even possibly the Gospel of Luke, were revised or actually created decades later?
That's wild. So, instead of being eyewitness history, this text could be, more like a second century piece of propaganda?
Right, exactly. Yes, exactly. We have this theory suggesting that around 180 CE, Irenaeus, who was known for his sharp anti-heretic stance, might have not only changed history but effectively invented it. Picture him as more of a canon maker than just a theologian.
Interesting. So, he'd be the one framing the narrative to solidify the church's unity and orthodoxy?
Absolutely. It's like he took an existing, messier version of what Christianity was, one that included diverse voices like Marcion's teachings, and rewrote it into a tidy, unified story. Instead of highlighting
Yeah.
dissent, he turns the narrative into a story of harmonious apostles.
Now remind me about Marcion's role in all this. How does his picture fit into the puzzle?
Marcion was pretty radical. Around 140 CE, he dropped his own gospel, a stripped-down, no-frills version that excluded the Jewish scriptures and any connection to the Old Testament. He even left out key figures like Peter and James. His work
Right.
was an attempt to, distance Jesus from his Jewish roots and focus solely on Paul's teachings.
So, Marcion's gospel was, in a way, a provocation, a real theological bombshell against the established order?
Exactly. It was like a wake-up call alarm for the early church. His version was clean, direct, and frankly, terrifying to the Orthodox leaders because it challenged the whole framework. It questioned the authority and consistency of the apostolic narratives.
And then comes Irenaeus. He was, if I understand correctly, the one who countered Marcion's version.
Yes, exactly. Irenaeus stepped in as the anti-heretic enforcer. Around 180 CE, he wrote his massive work against heresies where he attacked non-Orthodox groups. But more than just arguing, he actively reshaped history. He introduced the idea that Acts was penned by Luke, the companion of Paul, in order to bolster the narrative of unified apostolic authority.
That seems almost like a deliberate move. But isn't there evidence that earlier Christian writers never mentioned Acts or linked it with Luke?
That's what makes this theory so compelling. Before Irenaeus, no one, no Paul, no First Clement, not even Justin Martyr, cited or referred to Acts in the way we know it today. It appears that Acts was retroactively introduced to serve a specific purpose.
I mean, if Irenaeus created and edited these texts, then the picture of a harmonious, united church we've been told might just be, myth-making?
Precisely. It suggests that the New Testament, as we know it, could be less about faithfully recording events and more about creating a persuasive narrative to counter threats like Marcion's radical views.
Right, very intriguing. So, in this light, the unity among the apostles, the smooth transitions in Acts, they might have been, carefully constructed rather than organically derived from real events?
Exactly. And think about it. Acts portrays Apostle Paul as a team player who, contrary to his own letters, becomes a conciliatory figure who cooperates with Peter and James. It's as if the text was revised to downplay his more controversial independent stances mentioned in his own writings.
That strikes me as a pretty major discrepancy. Paul's letters clearly indicate that he received the gospel directly and even opposed Peter at times. How do we reconcile that?
Well, that's the heart of the theory. The Paul we read in Acts is almost a different person, a character rewritten to fit this ideal, unified narrative. His own epistles contradict the image we're given in Acts. It seems like a deliberate effort to shape public opinion.
So, could we say that the creation of these texts was a form of crisis management? A way for early Christian leaders to control the narrative in the midst of conflicting interpretations?
Absolutely. The whole process appears to have been about creating authority, a seamless story of apostolic succession and unity. It's like they were rewriting a messy, fragmented history into one compelling and orderly myth.
Right. And by doing that, they essentially turned what could have been a diverse set of teachings into one, well, canonized version of Christianity?
That's exactly it. They forged a script that not only streamlined different accounts but also marginalized dissenting voices like those of Marcion. This text then became the cornerstone of what we consider Orthodox Christianity today.
Yeah, huh. But I have to ask, does this mean that our understanding of divine history could just be a product of intentional editing? Isn't that a pretty heavy accusation?
It is heavy, and it opens up a lot of questions about the reliability and origins of our sacred texts. While it might sound scandalous, the evidence, or rather the scholarly arguments, suggest that these texts were manipulated as tools of authority rather than pure historical records.
I get the argument, but some might say it's just one interpretation among many. Isn't it a bit too convenient to pin everything on Irenaeus?
That's a fair point. While the theory is strong, especially with arguments from scholars like Richard Pervo and Joseph Tyson, it's still part of an ongoing debate. There's the possibility that the narrative evolved organically over time,
Yeah, I see where
too.
you're coming from. So, while the idea that Irenaeus might have forged parts of Luke Acts is compelling, we have to consider that our historical evidence is, well, limited and open to interpretation?
Exactly. It's an ongoing discourse in biblical scholarship. This perspective challenges us to reevaluate how we think about canon formation, historical authenticity, and even the very notion of divine revelation.
Absolutely. I mean, if what we're hearing is accurate, then early Christianity might have been as much about political and ecclesiastical maneuvering as it was about spiritual truth.
Right, and it turns the notion of divine intervention into a more human story of power struggles, crisis management, and the construction of authority.
And that raises some really fascinating questions about what our scriptures really represent. Are they divine history, or are they, in part, a strategic narrative crafted by church leaders?
Exactly, it's a provocative idea. It challenges centuries of tradition with the possibility that what was accepted as biblical truth could very well be, the product of redacted intentions and selective storytelling.
Right on. It almost feels like a plot twist straight out of a thriller novel, doesn't it? One moment you think you're reading a historical record, and the next, you find out it's been meticulously engineered.
Yeah. It's like, imagine reading a well-loved classic, only to discover it was ghost-written by a very persuasive mastermind. It really shakes the ground beneath traditional beliefs.
Now, one must wonder, if such manipulations occurred, how do we, today, get closer to whatever the original events might have been like?
That remains the challenge for historians and theologians alike. We have to sift through layers of redaction, bias, and intentional narrative shaping to try and uncover the messy beginnings of a movement that changed the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, in a way, this theory not only questions ancient texts, but also reminds us how history, even sacred history, can be reimagined by those in power.
Right. It's a call to re-examine our assumptions about what is divinely inspired and what might instead be a product of human invention driven by urgent needs to maintain unity and authority.
Absolutely. I have to say, this conversation has been eye-opening. It really makes you think about the origins of our traditions in a new light. The idea that the New Testament could be less a direct account of divine history and more a carefully engineered narrative is both fascinating and, well, unsettling.
Yeah, it definitely challenges deep-rooted beliefs, and it's a reminder that history is often written or rewritten by those with a clear agenda. And while it might not settle every debate, it certainly opens up intriguing avenues for inquiry.
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, whether one subscribes to this theory or not, it enriches our understanding of how texts, power, and belief systems can intertwine. It makes you wonder what other stories might have been reshaped in the shadows.
Absolutely. And it serves as a humbling reminder that our sacred texts might carry not only divine inspiration, but also the imprints of very human struggles for control and meaning.
Right. Thanks for this deep dive. It's been a thought-provoking exchange on how history, theology, and power intersect. I guess in the end, stories do change. The question remains, what's the truth behind them?
Exactly. And that's what keeps the conversation alive. Thanks for riding this journey with me.